Okay. Okay, so first we do the homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, good morning, everybody. And today is October 15th, 2016. And it was in 2009, I believe, that we started a series of classes on the Majjhima Nikaya, the middle-length discourses. And we finished that in July 2016, so about 6-7 years on the middle-length discourses. And all of those classes have been recorded. Most of them are now available on YouTube. So if you want to learn the middle-length discourses, you can find them. You put my name and Majjhima Nikaya on YouTube and you'll find them. And now we are turning over a new leaf, starting a new series on the Anguttara Nikaya. This is the 4th collection of discourses of the Buddha in the Pali Canon. So just by way of sort of preparation or introduction, in the Pali Sutta Pitaka, the collection of the Buddha's discourses, there are 4 collections. There is the Digha Nikaya, which are the long discourses. Do I have any attachments? Yes, one. Only one attachment, which I'll take with me. Or should I cut off this attachment and attain final nirvana? Okay, so the Digha Nikaya is the collection of the long discourses. The Majjhima Nikaya is the collection of middle-length discourses. Then we have 2 collections of discourses which are mostly short, though sometimes they come to be actually of middle length as well. This is the Samyutta. The word Samyutta means joined together. So I translate it as connected discourses, because these are discourses by the Buddha, which are mostly by the Buddha, which are joined together under a common topic or theme. So they're connected by the topic or theme. Then the word Anguttara comes from Anga, which means factor, plus Uttara, which one of the meanings can be increasing. So it would mean increasing by a factor. So the implication here is that the Anguttara Nikaya consists of 11 chapters, or 11, I call them 11 books, in the sense of big chapters, in which each chapter consists of suttas organized around a numerical theme, and in each chapter the number increases by one factor over the previous chapter. So we start with the book of ones, and it goes to the book of twos, book of threes, fours, and so forth, up to the book of 11s. In the Northern Buddhist tradition, there is a counterpart, or the counterpart to the Anguttara Nikaya is called Ekaka. Agama. Or it is also called Ekaka Agama, same thing, which means it's from Eka plus Uttara, which means increasing by one. Basically, the meaning is the same. In the Pali tradition, increasing by a factor. In the Northern tradition, increasing by one. So the organizing principle is each chapter increases the number of items by one. And it seems to me that what underlies the Anguttara Nikaya, it's not simply a numerical scheme, but also that this numerical system of organization served a practical purpose. And that, in my sort of conjecture, the suttas in the Anguttara Nikaya were put into this particular collection because they serve a very practical purpose. That is the purpose of instruction. That is, these were suttas which were used for the purpose of, largely for the purpose of instruction, because the numerical method makes it very easy to use a discourse for the purpose of instruction. Like if an elder monk is teaching a group of young monks, he has to teach the Dhamma. What is the easiest way to do that? You have to give a teaching. You know, if you just go blah, 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 then the next day you ask the young monks, what did you learn? Blank stares. But if you put it in a list of 8, there are these 8 things, then the next day you say, what did you learn? Then the sharp young monks will, repeat, oh, we learned these 8 things. Similarly, if a monk is giving a sermon or discourse to the laity, he's worried, what am I going to talk about? Oh, I don't know what I'm going to teach. Oh, I'm so nervous about giving a discourse. Oh. But then somebody says, look, here's the sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya. There are these 5 things. There it is. You have the subject of your sermon right there, laid out right in front of you. So it's so easy. So it serves a very practical purpose. Okay, so this is sort of my conjecture about the function of the Anguttara Nikaya. It serves as, the way I see it, a pedagogical purpose. That is, it serves the purpose of teaching. A body of discourses by which that could serve for senior monks teaching junior monks and for the monastics who are teaching the lay community, giving instruction to the lay community. So it sort of breaks the teaching down into easily remembered units that are easy to remember. And of course we have to bear in mind that in the early centuries of Buddha's history, the teachings were not written down, but they were transmitted orally. So in oral transmission, numerical schemes help to impress or imprint the teachings in the mind so that it's not lost. Okay, so with this we come to the very first book of the Anguttara Nikaya, which, given the way in which numbers are organized, whether east or west, numbers begin with 1. And we have the book of, so we start with the book of the ones. And so let us see what we... Okay, now, when I looked over the suttas in the ones, I found this massive material, and I was trying to figure out how to present this in a class. And it seemed to me that this material could be broken down, apart from the way it's divided into vaggas or chapters by the compilers. I thought to break it down into sections, manageable units, in theoretical principle or in theory, such that I could use each section for one class. Though probably in reality, it might take more than one class to deal with each section. But it seems that each section groups together suttas in a kind of within a unifying framework. So I call this first section the mind, because the unifying theme that underlies this first group of suttas is the mind. Yeah, find a comfortable... Can you see from that position? Okay. Okay, now the way I understand now the organization of the suttas here, the particular sequence in which they were presented, the motive that underlies this comes from the monastic perspective of the compilers, which was not, in my opinion, the most, let's say, the most logical perspective. Maybe it was the most strategic perspective, but it's not the most logical place to start. So rather, I'm going to first just point out that if we look at these suttas, we see the unifying theme consists in the expression, the mind, the mind, the mind. Here, the mind of a man, the mind of a man in each sutta. Again, we have the mind of a woman, the mind of a woman. I'm going to come back to these suttas because they're important. But I want to get... Then we come to the hindrances, which sort of reflects back to these earlier suttas. But I see the proper place to start, would be here with the series of suttas that begins here. that I do not see even one other thing that when undeveloped is so unwieldy as the mind. An undeveloped mind is unwieldy. I do not see even one other thing that when developed is so wieldy as the mind. The developed mind is wieldy. I'm just going to go through the series of suttas, then I'm going to explain and elaborate. I do not see even one other thing that when undeveloped leads to such great harm as the mind. An undeveloped mind leads to great harm. In fact, I would begin with this sutta rather than with these two. I would begin with 23 and 24. I do not see even one other thing that when developed leads to such great good as the mind. The developed mind leads to great good. Then the suttas that follow just seem to be elaborations of 23 and 24. Here we have something that when undeveloped and unmanifested leads to such great harm as the mind. Something that when developed and manifested leads to such great good as the mind. Something that when undeveloped and uncultivated leads to such great harm as the mind. Something that when developed and cultivated leads to such great good as the mind. Something that when undeveloped and uncultivated brings such great suffering as the mind. Something that when developed and cultivated brings such happiness as the mind. Something that when untamed leads to such great harm as the mind. Something that when tamed leads to such great good as the mind. Something that when unguarded leads to such great harm as the mind. Something that when guarded leads to such great good as the mind. Something that when unprotected, protected, unrestrained, restrained, untamed, unguarded, unprotected, untamed, unguarded, unprotected, unrestrained leads to great harm as the mind. Something that when tamed, guarded, protected, and restrained leads to such great good as the mind. So the mind, when tamed, guarded, protected, and restrained, leads to great good. So you could say all of these suttas are basically, with different variations in wording, conveying the same point. And sort of the centerpiece of all of these suttas is the mind. And the word that is being translated here as the mind, the Pali word is citta. So you could say that this is almost like the central word in understanding the entire teaching of the Buddha is the word citta. In early Buddhism, there are 3 words that are used to convey, you call mental activity, mind, or consciousness. These 3 words are citta, mano, and vijnana. From an Abhidhamma standpoint, the 3 are treated pretty much as synonymous. But in the suttas, they are used in different contexts with different nuances or different, let's say, different functions. So the word vijnana is usually used in relation to cognition, to cognitive experience. So we have the 6 types of vijnana, the 6 types of consciousness. So we have eye consciousness, by which one knows forms through the eye, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, mind consciousness, through which one knows forms with the mind. And sometimes, occasionally, vijnana is used to indicate that principle of experience that moves on from life to life, sort of the stream of experience that evolves from life to life. Okay, mano, which we translate also as mind, is used specifically in terms of action. So we have bodily action, verbal action, and mental action, action of mano. Or we have the 6 faculties of knowing. The body faculty, ear faculty, the eye faculty, ear faculty, nose faculty, tongue faculty, body faculty, and then the mind faculty, mano, man indriya. But the word citta is used in, I would say, the most central and important sense to indicate what I would call the core of the person. Not in the metaphysical sense, not as something like an Atman, but the citta is you could say it's how to put this. I should have worked out an exact phrasing of this last night, which I didn't do. We could say it's the core of our personal identity, that which is the accumulation of all of our personal tendencies, habits, dispositions of mind, that from which all of our activities flow. It's almost like a storehouse of, almost a bottomless storehouse of residual tendencies and dispositions that has to be deeply known and understood. It's something that has to be tamed. It's the source of defilement. It is, we say that it's the citta that is subject to defilement. It is the citta that has to be purified, the citta that has to be tamed and guarded and protected, the citta that has to be liberated and freed through right knowledge. And it is the citta which becomes glorious and radiant when it's liberated. And at the core of the citta there is a kind of luminosity which becomes manifested through the process of mental cultivation, as we'll see. And according to the Buddha, as these suttas make clear, the citta has immense capacity both for good and for bad. In fact, one could say that the citta is what builds up the entire cycle of birth and death, the entire cycle of samsara. Yeah, the text speaks about the citta, which is undeveloped and uncultivated, but it seems to me that the citta can be developed in negative directions and also in positive directions. Its power can be used for great harm. It can be developed in a way which will bring immense harm as well as immense benefits. This is the Hiroshima bomb. That is, where does that bomb come from? Power of the mind, the negative power of the mind. Some of these pictures are going to be rather gruesome, so if anybody is sensitive to these things, be careful. This is the Khmer Rouge, the genocide result. Again, it's the power of the mind, the negative power of the mind. This is one of the concentration camps at the end of World War II. The power of the negative power of the mind. The World Trade Center on September 11th, 2001. Activities carefully planned, the activities of the mind. The mind could also be used, with its power in ways that are maybe ethically neutral. The bridges, Brooklyn Bridge, Manhattan Bridge. Immense planning has to be put into this. Careful, very careful planning. But it's all the capacities of the mind. The Taj Mahal, one of the splendors of artistic creation, demonstrates the vision of beauty of which the mind is capable. Wall Street. It's not necessarily a manifestation of greed. It could be taken as a neutral place where business is conducted. I was going to use the Mona Lisa, but I thought that's too stereotyped, so I took Picasso of a girl looking in the mirror. And then, of course, one of the great artistic... Wait, category mistake. No, that's not the creation of the mind. And then we have, of course, the power of the good mind. The saints and sages of human history. And then beyond individual manifestations, we have in Buddhism the three realms of samsara, of existence, are, you could say that they're not made of mind, according to Buddhism. That they are material realms of existence, but it is the karma generated by the mind which brings to manifestation these realms of existence. So you take the five destinations. So all of these existence and all of these realms comes about through karma. And karma, it's a activity of the citta. Specifically, it's the volition or intention, the cetana. And the cetana brings rebirth into whether it's the hell realm, the animal realm, the realm of the afflicted spirits, the human realm, the lower sense-sphere devas, the Brahma world, the realm of the formless beings. Existence in all of those realms is a manifestation of the tendencies in the citta. And then Nibbana itself comes about through cultivation of the Noble Eightfold Path, specifically through developing the world-transcending samadhi and panya, concentration and wisdom of the Noble Eightfold Path. And that is the development of specific types of citta. And so the citta, you could say, it's the core of the Buddha's teaching. And now there's a difference in perspective on citta between the Abhidhamma and the suttas, in that in the Abhidhamma they speak about different classes of cittas, different types of cittas, classifying cittas according to planes of existence, wholesome, unwholesome. And so you get a plurality of cittas. In sutta terminology, citta is always treated as a singular. I did a search out of curiosity last night. I did a search, this is one of the wonders of modern technology, using this, where is it? I think it's this Cortana, it's driving it, all the other programs underground. The Sixth Council, Tripitaka. I did a search using cittani, the plural of citta, searching only through the suttas, the canonical texts, blocking Abhidhamma searches to see whether Chitani, the plural of Chitta, ever occurs in the suttas. And it does occur, but wherever the plural of Chitta occurs, it occurs in such phrases as the minds of those 60 monks were liberated from the defilements, or the minds of those 20 deities were pleased with that place. In other words, where chitta occurs in the plural is referring to a number of people or beings, not different chittas within the same person. So when chitta is used in relation to a person, it's always considered like a singular. Though again, I have to say, it's not like an atman, like a self-existent entity, but it's just the way we use the ordinary, in our ordinary language, we speak about the mind. Like, this is my mind is disturbed, my mind is worried, my mind is full of anger, my mind is quiet, my mind is peaceful. Just like in conventional language, we speak about my mind as though it were a single entity. So in sutta language, the word chitta is used in such a way. Okay, so maybe at this point, I'll ask whether there's any questions about what has been covered so far. Allison has a question.
So, Bhante, based on your description, that means chitta covers all.
What do you mean covers all?
In a sense, chitta is in a broader term for everything. Mano is just simply just one of the description, but it's not, it's a subset of a chitta.
Let's say that the terms in a technical sense are synonymous, but they're used in different contexts. And so chitta is used in the, I would say in the broader, let's say mano and vijnana are used in narrower and more specific contexts, more technical contexts, whereas chitta is used in a broader context, in those contexts in which we would use the word mind in our day-to-day language, rather than in a more technical language where we're speaking about mind in terms of cognitive functions.
Another question, chitta in Buddhism, based on what you just described, if from my understanding, it covers self and non-self.
I don't think the language of self and non-self enters into discussions of chitta. Strictly, I mean, all dhammas, according to Buddhism, are non-self. So one would never technically speak of chitta as a self in any kind of metaphysical sense. So
maybe I should say that is the defilement, or like is including ego and non-ego part. That's my understanding.
I'm not quite sure what you mean, but let's just leave it as, and you'll see, I think as we go along, you'll see how the word chitta is used. I think maybe I should continue to go along, because I want to really come into the main theme of this chapter. Okay, so let us continue. Okay, this is, I think, a good example that will help us understand the meaning of citta in the suttas. Sorry to have the Pali version. I found it's easier for me to find. Let me get the English version. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Okay. Okay, that's what I want. Okay, so here the Buddha is speaking about how one should be aware of one's own citta, how one should understand one's own citta. So he says, a monk who is not skilled in the ways of others' minds. So sacitta paracitta pariyaya kusalo hoti na hoti. One should be aware or skilled. So a monk who is not skilled in the ways of others' minds should train. I will be skilled in the ways of my own mind, my own citta. It is in this way that you should train yourself. So how is a monk skilled in the ways of his own mind? It is just like a young woman or a man who would look at their own facial reflection in the mirror. So if they see any dust or blemish there, they would make the effort to remove it. But if they do not see any dust or blemish there, they would be glad about it, and they would think how fortunate that I'm clean. So too, self-examination is very helpful to grow in wholesome qualities. And so one should ask oneself, am I often given to longing or without longing? That's greed. Am I often given to ill will or without ill will? Given to dullness or free from dullness? Often restless or free from restless? Plagued by doubts, angry without anger, and so forth. So when you are examining yourself, maybe that's what you mean by yourself, that means that you're examining your own citta. And when you're training yourself, what you say, I'm training myself, then you're training your own citta. Okay, so now we come to a sutta, again, which again summarizes the same point. So the Buddha says, just as sandalwood is declared to be the best of trees with respect to malleability and wieldiness, so I do not see one other thing that when developed and cultivated is so malleable and wieldy as the mind. A developed and cultivated mind is malleable and wieldy. Then I do not see even one other thing that changes so quickly as the mind. It is not easy to give a simile for how quickly the mind changes. The commentaries understand this or explain this in the Abhidhammic sense that the citta is always changing much more quickly than matter. They explain that matter changes, or that the citta changes 16 times more quickly than matter. That in the time that one material Dhamma arises and ceases, the citta arises and ceases 16 times. I don't think that's the actual intention, the original intention of the canonical text of the Buddha. Rather, I think what the Buddha is pointing to here is that one's mind can change from good to bad very quickly. You know, sometimes without any foreknowledge, if one is not being mindful, careful, diligent, just sometimes sudden impulse, one could just completely degenerate. I've seen this happen with, with people that I've known. And I think if you reflect in your own experience, you've known this to happen with people who start off with very good intentions, and sometimes they come under the influence of bad friends or a wrong view, and they just take the bad course. Then comes an interesting idea, which is stated in different ways in two pairs of suttas, slightly different ways. First, and it's a puzzle, why there are two pairs of suttas which state the same idea. First comes the blank statement, luminous bhikkhus is this mind, but it is defiled by adventitious. Does anybody not know what adventitious means? Okay, be honest. It's, okay. Adventitious means coming from the outside, like a guest comes from the outside, or a visitor comes from the outside. Like it's in a hotel, there is the staff works in the hotel, but then there are the guests who come, stay for a couple of days, and then depart. So the guests who come and depart, those are the adventitious people. The staff, those are the regulars. Okay, so we have the mind is luminous, but it's defiled by adventitious defilements. Defilements are here said a little bit strangely that they come from the outside. Then again it said, luminous is this mind, and it is freed from adventitious defilements. So this is one pair of suttas. Then we have another pair, almost starts with the same statement. Luminous is this mind, but it is defiled by adventitious defilements. Then the uninstructed worldling does not understand this as it really is. Therefore I say that for the uninstructed worldling there is no development of the mind. Luminous is this mind, and it is freed from adventitious defilements, freed from these defilements that come from the outside. The instructed noble disciple understands this as it really is. Therefore, I say that for the instructed noble disciple, there is development of the mind. This is an extremely interesting pair of suttas. Now, and it's also a puzzling statement. What is meant by saying, luminous is this mind? And here's where I get in trouble because I disagree with the commentary. Let's see what the commentary says. Cortana, you are blocking my... Wow. Okay. Okay, I'm going to, just choose some passages here. Okay, it says, I say the exact meaning of the statement has been a matter of contention that has spawned conflicting interpretations. MP, this is Manoratta Purani, that's the commentary, identifies the luminous mind with the Bhavanga Citta. Some of you have been coming to the Abhidhamma seminar. Now the Bhavanga Citta is we call the subconscious flow of the series of cittas that constitute the subliminal or subconscious flow that occurs when the active cognitive processes are not occurring. And the reason why the commentary says that the Bhavanga Citta is luminous is because the Bhavanga Citta, by its very nature, is without greed, hatred, and delusion, because it's a resultant citta which just occurs without full conscious awareness. So it's by its nature, it's without greed, hatred, and delusion. But also it's without clear awareness. So it seems rather strange to me to call that kind of citta luminous. Okay, so here I quote the commentary. The Bhavanga Citta is called luminous, that is pure, because it is without defilements. And the defilements arise only later in the jhavana phase. Then I say I find this explanation problematic for two reasons. The first is that the very concept of the Bhavanga-citta is not found in the Nikayas, but it arises only later in the Abhidhamma period and in a rather late stage of the Abhidhamma period. And the second reason that I find it problematic is that the text states flatly that this mind is luminous without any qualifications. It doesn't say this Bhavanga-citta is luminous, but it just says this mind, which seems to imply that luminosity is inherent or intrinsic to the mind itself. Then I did a little searching for the word, the Pali word that is translated luminous, which is the word is pabasara. And I found the most helpful text is Anguttara Nikaya, Book of 5, Sutta number 23. Let us see if we could get it here. Ah. Okay, here we are. Okay. So the Buddha speaking, he says that there are these 5 defilements of gold, defiled by which gold is not malleable, wieldy, and luminous, but brittle and not properly fit for work. What 5? Iron, copper, tin, lead, and silver. These are the 5 defilements of gold, defiled by which gold is not malleable, wieldy, and luminous. Here we have that word, pabasara, the same word, luminous, but brittle and not properly fit for work. But when gold is freed from these 5 defilements, it is malleable, wieldy, and luminous, pliant, and properly fit for work. So almost the same idea that we find in our sutta from the Anguttara Nikaya. So gold is, by its own nature, you could say gold is luminous, but it's defiled by 5 other metals or other substances, and so it becomes not luminous. Then when these other 5 metals are removed, then the gold becomes luminous and is fit for work. And then whatever kind of ornament one wishes to make from it, a bracelet, earrings, necklace, or a golden garland, one could achieve one's purpose. And so too, there are these 5 defilements of the mind, defiled by which the mind is not malleable, wieldy, and luminous, but brittle and not properly concentrated for the destruction of the taints, for the defilements. What are the 5? Sensual desire, ill will, dullness and drowsiness, restlessness and remorse and doubt. Okay, so we have defilements of the mind. See, these are like adventitious defilements which come into the mind so that the mind is not luminous. But then when the mind is freed from these 5 defilements, then it becomes malleable, wieldy, and luminous. compliant and properly concentrated for the destruction of the taints. And then one can use the mind for any purpose that one wishes. And then the text goes on to mention the different kinds of psychic power, the divine ear element, reading the minds of others, recollecting one's past lives, the divine eye by which one could see how beings pass away and take rebirth, and then knowledge of the destruction of the defilements. Okay, so the key point here is that the mind, we could say, is intrinsically luminous, but because of these defilements, the five hindrances, they cover up the mind so that that luminosity does not manifest. But when the five hindrances, those defilements, are removed, then the luminosity manifests and the mind becomes bright, malleable, powerful, and can be used for any kind of beneficial purpose. And then that ties in with this statement in the Anguttara Nikaya that this mind is luminous and it can become freed from adventitious defilements. And so the instructed noble disciple understands this, and so the instructed noble disciple, for the instructed noble disciple, there is development of the mind. Okay, so now we see that these adventitious defilements that obstruct the luminosity of the mind, those are the five hindrances. We see that through this Anguttara Nikaya, Book 5, Sutta 23. And now that leads us back to the earlier chapter in the Anguttara Nikaya on the Book of Ones, the section 2 called Abandoning the Hindrances, Suttas 11, 12, 13, 14. Well, let's say Suttas 11 to 20. And then Sutta 11 speaks about, I do not see even one other thing on account of which unarisen sensual desire arises, and arisen sensual desire increases and expands so much as the mark of the attractive, the sign of the attractive feature of things. And now the compilers of this Anguttara Nikaya, these are senior Buddhist monks, and they are thinking the sign of the attractive, the beautiful feature of things. Are they going to be thinking the sign of the attractive, beautiful works of art for their younger monks? Beautiful pieces of music? What kind of form obsesses the mind of a man? Natural landscapes? Flowing rivers? Grand mountains? The stars at night? the full moon shining amongst the trees. Am I missing something? What am I missing? Oh. Yeah. Okay, and what kind of sound will obsess the mind of that young monk? Those strands of Rolling Stone music coming over the radio. You see, I still go back to the 1960s. Still cheered when Bob Dylan won the Nobel Prize the other day. Or the sound of birds singing in the trees. Okay, so anyway, you get the point. Okay, so in the organization, we go from the luminous mind covered over by adventitious defilements, those defilements being the 5 mental hindrances. So that takes us to this chapter on, actually they're on abandoning the 5 hindrances. Which actually, the abandoning the 5 hindrances actually has 2 parts, which is the factors that cause the 5 hindrances to arise, and then the factors that bring the abandoning of the 5 hindrances. And then when we consider the factors that cause the 5 hindrances to arise, what are the most potent factors to cause the hindrances to arise? Those would be the factors that, especially that cause sensual desire to arise. So that will be, in the case of the man, the 5 sense objects relating to a woman. In the case of the woman, the 5 sensual sense objects relating to a man. But it occurred to me, psychologically speaking, I wonder whether it really works the same way. Maybe some of you, since I'm a man, not a woman, whether it works the same way in the case of a man and a woman. I think it's different because, we have, or we used to have, I think the internet has made it obsolete, but there used to be like the Playboy magazine with the nude girly centerfolds and the photographs. But I heard that years ago they put out, maybe the same company, a different company, put out a Playgirl magazine to try to balance. But the customers for the Playgirl magazine, which showed the men with loincloths and muscular men. It wasn't women who were buying it, but it was gay men. So I think with women, essentially, it works differently than with men. I don't know. And probably like about 98, 99% of like pornography customers will be males. but at least the early text shows some degree of maybe gender balance in the treatment, that we could give them credit for that. Okay, any questions so far on, perhaps we should next week look at the, because I went through the chapter on the Five Hindrances just quickly to bring out the structural relationship of that chapter to this whole section on the mind. Maybe next week we'll look more carefully at this section on the Five Hindrances. But at this point, I'll ask whether there are any questions on the material that we've covered so far today. And please, stand up and speak loud and clear.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you, Bounty. We go back to the Chitta, Mano, and Vijnana. Seems like the Vijnana holding the principles, right?
The
Vijnana.
Vijnana.
Vijnana is holding the principles. Seems like Chitta is like a flowing of thought, and is trying to function. What the principle is. Well, Chitta sending commands to Mano, because Mano is the 6 faculty roots, right?
Yeah, I'm not hearing you so clearly. You speak more loudly.
Okay. What my understanding about this Chitta, Mano, and the Vijnana is like a 3 aspect of the mind.
Yeah.
So Vijnana seems like holding the principles.
Holding the principles.
Yes, like principles. Well, Chitta is like functioning, like flow of thoughts according to the principles. And the Mano is the 6 faculties which trying to execute the command, with the result from Chitta, the flow of thought. Is that?
Yeah. To see the meaning of Vijnana, one should consider that Vijnana functions mainly, or we see it mainly in relationship to the 5 aggregates. And in the analysis of the 5 aggregates, Vijnana is broken down into the 6 types of Vijnana. As I said, we have the I consciousness. And I consciousness is consciousness which cognizes or which knows forms, visible forms through the eye. It's Vijnana which knows sounds through the ear, which knows odors through the nose, which knows taste through the tongue, which knows tactile sensations through the body, which knows ideas or concepts through the mind. Through the Mano, actually Vijnana knows through the Mano. So Mano, we could say, is an organ through which Vijnana operates. So that's one way in which Mano functions, is as an organ for Vijnana. But Mano functions as one of the 6 organs or faculties.
Does it go through Chitta? Vijnana goes through Chitta, then to Mano?
When the Mano and Vijnana relationship is spoken about, Chitta is not brought into the picture, so far as I can recall. Chitta, language about Chitta occurs in a very different context. It doesn't occur in a technical context, but rather in I would call it a more personalistic context. In speaking the language about a person's self-observation, observation about what is the state of my mind. Is my mind worried, defiled, anxious, greedy, full of hate, defiled. Does it have to be purified? Is it purified? Is it liberated? It's in those kind of contexts that the word citta is used. You know, it's through reading a lot that one get, especially in Pali, where one has precise usage of the words, that one gets familiar with how citta and mano are used. In English translation, we just get the words mind used for both mano and citta. Okay, I think we'll end for the, I will speak about that, end for the day now. Before we let us just wait until the gong is finished. Is this method helpful, by the way, using the projector onto the wall? I think it's useful because I can then search for other texts and then project them so everybody can see, rather than reading and then you have to depend on my voice. Okay, before we end, I want to mention that we have our organization called Buddhist Global Relief, which provides assistance to poor communities around the world, communities afflicted with chronic hunger and malnutrition. We have projects, about 25 projects in countries ranging from Cambodia and Vietnam through India, Sri Lanka, Africa, including Malawi, Cote d'Ivoire, the Ivory Coast, to Haiti, and several places in the United States, providing both direct food aid and tackling the root causes of hunger, especially through providing education to poor girls and right livelihood projects to women. Projects in Bangladesh also, I should mention. And our main fundraising activity is a walk to feed the hungry, which we have every year in about 10 locations in the United States, ranging from coast to coast, East Coast to West Coast. And this year, the walk in New York City will take place on October 29th. And here we have a stack of cards about the walk and some posters about the walk. If any of you are affiliated with other meditation centers or temples, you could take the poster and post them at your other temple or meditation center, but take the card so that you keep informed about the walk. And we also have a walk in Wellington, if you're living closer to in upstate New York or Connecticut, we have a walk in Connecticut on November 6th. organized by none other than Allison, who is right here. Do you want to say anything about the walk? It's at the Lao Buddhist Temple in Wellington. And so if you're closer to Wellington, then you can join that walk. And if you're able to, you can join both walks. If you're not able to join the walk in person, please donate to Buddhist Global Relief to support our projects. That is the most important thing. Okay, so let us end with the sharing of the merits, and we can come back after the lunch. Let us say we'll meet at 12:15. If there are any questions to be discussed about the material covered so far, then we can discuss those questions. Okay, so I think all of you have the sharing of the merit sheet. So we're going to share the merits with the devas, the Dhamma-protecting deities, the bhutas or the fear spirits, the nagas, the dragon spirits, and with all sentient beings. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahitika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu sasanam. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahitika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu desanam. Akasata chabumata Deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu mang parang etavatacham hehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe devanumodantu sabba sampati siddhya etavatacham hehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe bhutanumodantu Sabba sampati siddhya etavatacham hehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe satanumodantu sabba sampati siddhya bhavagupadaya vichihetato etantare satakayupapanna rupi arupi cha asanya sanino dukkha pamuchantu pusantu nibbutting. Okay, so we have a class next week, and I assume everybody who's here has registered for the class. There was a little confusion because in order to get the collected material, the text, one has to register for this class because it's copyrighted material. Okay, so we'll end with 3 half bows to the Buddha.